What's up, everybody? You're very welcome along to this special preview. I am joined by Alex Goldberg, one of, if not the most known Chelsea fans in the world. Somebody I've been meaning to catch up with for ages. And it hurts me, Alex, I won't lie, mate, to have you on at such a good time for your club, mate, because, I can almost feel that the contentness from inside you from here, mate, how good things are going. But, mate, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
No, Craig, it's an absolute pleasure to be on. And, we haven't known each other for like too long, but ever since we started talking, I regard you, and I'm not just saying this because it's your channel. I regard you as, of course, a great content creator, but more importantly, not to get too cheesy and corny, a great person. I love seeing you link up with Mark Goldbridge, obviously someone I've been collaborating with here and there over the years. So no, it's an absolute pleasure to be on. And like I already told you, we'll have a return leg on my channel. So no, it's a pleasure.
Oh, that'll be absolutely tons of fun, mate, and hit me up anytime. And look, let's start with, I suppose, the big news of your transfer window at the minute. It looks like somebody's coming home, somebody who you guys signed very early on in his career. He has since gone on to do great things, particularly at Inter. How excited are you of having Romelu Lukaku coming back to the Bridge?
Yeah, I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing. Like, I'm already getting goosebumps talking about it. And I'm genuine in saying that. Like, I think we all as fans, so Liverpool fans can relate, just any fans can relate. Like, when we know a transfer is about to happen for our club, even if we were kind of iffy on that player, we almost want to convince ourselves, at least when the announcement comes, that we like it, right? We want to be glass half full. We want to be as excited as everyone else about it. So you kind of convince yourself, well, I have my reservations, but like, actually, it probably will go great. But it's important to be objective. In this moment, I'm objective. Like, I wanted Lukaku the whole entire time. So I'm happy for Chelsea fans to maybe change their tune and say, yeah, welcome Lukaku. But that wasn't the whole fan base. And Craig, it's probably really appropriate to say this on this channel where, of course, like Liverpool fans would be never neutrals, but like kind of objective because they didn't have Lukaku. Obviously, it was Manchester United and Chelsea that have had Lukaku within the Premier League and Everton and West Brom. So like, some Chelsea fans still remember the Manchester United version. And of course, Manchester United fans remember that Lukaku, and just Premier League fans in general, right, might remember that version of, okay, long touch, and yeah, he'll score goals, but he was part of a dysfunctional Manchester United and he couldn't kind of bring them to the next level. These narratives get written. But I still think that a guy like that, even the Manchester United version, is still really unique because he just scores no matter what he scores. Yeah, there might be some inefficiencies, some weaknesses, but still, like, how many guys in the world can you say no matter what they're going to go out and get this many goals for us? Okay, like, so he was still really good in my opinion. And no matter what, something we needed after last season where Jorginho ended as our scoring leader was seven pens. Okay, but then what he did at Inter, I mean, he just became such a better player, like a much better player all around. He improved his hold-up play. He improved his finishing with his right, his creating. I mean, I think left-footed players get this stigma. Maybe Mohamed Salah has it as well. But, like, if you're left-footed, you're only left-footed. You apparently don't have a right foot. But Lukaku has really, like, shown that he's not a liability on that foot. So he's really polished his game. Antonio Conte, I think we all know he's crazy. But Lukaku really took to that. And apparently Lukaku, and we love Eden Hazard. I know Liverpool fans will banter him, and hey, that's just the name of the game. We'll do it in return to your guys. But like, as much as we love Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku is kind of the opposite in terms of mentality. Like, Eden's just happy playing and having fun. Lukaku wants to get better and better and better. So he's coming to Chelsea after really expanding his game for 2 years in Italy. We need what he is. He's coming here. He's in his prime. And really, his mentality just wants to show that he can be the best striker in the world. If he can become that, we'll see. But he's exactly what we need. The coming home part hits even better for us. And the last point is, like, don't you always want a player with a chip on their shoulder? He's got a chip on his shoulder because it didn't work out the first time at Chelsea. Mourinho wasn't really into the whole young striker thing. He wanted proven players. And just in general, I think he knows he has a chip on his shoulder to prove to the Premier League fans, just in general, that he is a much better player than when he was last. So, yeah, I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, there's been a few of those types of players. I'm thinking De Bruyne, I'm thinking Mohamed Salah from our own perspective that, didn't have the early success, went off, came back and proved the point. And just to touch on one aspect of Lukaku, his physique is phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
he's always had pace, you know, he's always been powerful and explosive, but what he's done over at Inter Milan, you know, dropping kilos, but not really dropping mass, so to speak. He looks lean, powerful, pacey, and frightening at times, I won't lie.
Yeah, he chiseled up. I mean, Antonio Conte really is huge on nutrition, and it seemed like Lukaku really took to that. And you know what, like, to coincide with what I just said about Lukaku being an individual that just wants to get better and better and better, I'm sure he looked at himself, right? Even without Conte, I'm sure he looked at himself and said, well, I've scored all these goals already in the Premier League and for Belgium, but what can I do to get to the next level? And of course, like, get in even better shape. You know, if one of your strengths is your strength, but also your pace and your power just overall, well, improve your physique even more. And he certainly did that. And I think that kind of coincides with also polishing up the other areas of your game, because if you get in better shape, you probably can polish up the other areas. But yeah, I mean, there really isn't anybody who's a top striker right now who's built like Lukaku. There really isn't.
Fair to say as well that, you know, over the past 18 months or so, the rebuild, the transformation at Stamford Bridge has been something to behold. I mean, signings have been top notch. I still think Timo Werner will come good. I would have loved him at Liverpool. The one for me, though, Alex, the one that got away, and still to this day annoys me, is Christian Pulisic. I would have given my right arm to have him. And I looked at it and I thought, US men's national team player, superstar, could help Liverpool, you know, open up an even bigger market in the States. We've got American owners. I never understood why we didn't go in for the guy, even with the Dortmund background as well. I mean, I think you guys have one hell of a player who still you haven't seen the best of, but the sky's the limit for me with him.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You know, you would probably think that I have like no Liverpool knowledge coming on this stream because I'm a Chelsea fan. Besides, obviously, like, I know your team and everything like that, but I'm actually a huge Boston Red Sox fan. So like, I do have some extra knowledge of Liverpool. And what I mean by that is Fenway Sports Group. So I know how John Henry and Fenway Sports Group do things. And to piggyback off of what you were just saying, I'm a little surprised as well, because if there's anything I know about John Henry and Fenway Sports Group, if there's $1 to be made, £1 to be made, whatever you want to say, they'll make it. So they once made like an egregious signing, man, a long time ago now, where they got this guy, Pablo Sandoval. I'm not going to bore you with baseball stuff, but it's just a really quick example here. They got this guy, Pablo Sandoval, from the San Francisco Giants. His nickname was Panda. Okay, still is probably. But there were so many graphs and analytics saying, don't sign him, or at least don't sign him for this amount of money. But they looked at what they could do with him commercially, make Panda hats, make Panda t-shirts, bring him in just for really the extra stuff, not the on the field stuff. So they brought him in, and it was a horrible deal. But on the reverse, like Pulisic, he's got plenty of talent. He's young. There's a lot of potential to fill out there, and he is marketable. So I agree. I am surprised that you guys didn't at least come closer to getting him. And now thinking about it, like, of course, Mane and Salah would still be your two starting wingers. But if you take into account the fact that Pulisic has struggled with injuries anyway, he'd probably make the perfect third winger rotating in. And by the way, his dad's been on my podcast twice, and both times he has said that Pulisic's actually probably best through the middle, even though he never really gets a chance to play there. So yeah, it's a good shout.
I guess I'm trying to console myself by the fact that Gio Reyna is still maybe a possibility down the line, and I know that, that Jurgen Klopp has a soft spot for him. On FSG, actually, I mean, it's very interesting to hear you're a Red Sox fan and you've got some background on them as, I don't want to use the words franchise owners, but as a sporting club owner. I think it's fair to say that they've had a mixed bag at Liverpool. They've certainly delivered with regards to Jurgen Klopp Premier League title, Champions League, absolute financial stability. That they've helped us grow with commercial partners and sponsorship. They've brought in some experts to help run the club. But how are they viewed over in Boston? Because from my limited knowledge of it, it seems to be that they front-loaded a lot of success and now are starting to, run contracts down and not pay out the type of money they previously did. And there are some unhappy Red Sox fans.
Yep. So very similar to Liverpool. On the surface, we can't complain too much, right? Because they got us championships. And for us specifically, the Red Sox, they helped break a curse of not winning the World Series for 89 years.
Curse of the Bambino. Even I knew about that.
There you go. So like not too long after they took over, boom, World Series, curse broken. And they really did. Even though Boston's always been a pretty big spot for baseball, they took it to the next level. They got in even better and bigger players in. And then over time, they also like cared about what the academy would be for Liverpool. I'm just putting it in that term. So they cared about the farm system, is what you would call it in baseball. And when I say they cared, I mean, they found people who knew what they were doing. Like, I'm not saying they actually know a lot about baseball analytics and football analytics, but, they have good resources. So, we've won 4 World Series now under them, which is a lot of World Series. Like that's 4 more than many franchises have won, period. But they have done some things that really we perceived, Craig, as tone deaf. So like we had some great players who were homegrown, who still, even just from an analytical baseball point of view, should have stayed. And they just really lately have not managed the team well in terms of finances. So like we had, I'm not going to bore you with names. We had one guy named John Lester who wanted to stay, and he was a really good pitcher, and he was willing to take a little bit less to stay, in terms of going elsewhere and getting a bit more money and just leaving his home. So like he made it pretty apparent he would stay for a little bit less money, but FSG were just too tone deaf to like how the fans would react to it. Most importantly, if they did let him go, they wanted to appear like they were brute and brash in that moment. Like, no. Like, I'm sorry, but we'd rather get rid of something a little bit too early than too late. And there was no reason to say goodbye to him. And yeah, we really were angry with that. And then the latest one, we had this guy, Mookie Betts, who's now for the Los Angeles Dodgers, one of the best players in baseball. And they just made so many bad financial moves, gave out these big lucrative contracts to other players that they should have never done so with. And then they got over the luxury tax, which is called, the luxury tax in baseball. You just can't spend any more before, fixing the finances. Don't want to bore you. And they pretty much put themselves in a corner where they had to trade the first or second best player in baseball in Mookie Betts, another guy who was homegrown. So like imagine an academy Liverpool player becoming one of the best players in the world, or at least the league. And you've put yourself in a financial box where you almost have to sell them, almost like what just happened with Barcelona and Messi, kind of in that regard. Like, I'm not saying Mookie Betts was Messi, but it's very similar where like you made so many bad deals that now someone who means so much to your current team, but also the fans, you have literally put yourself in a position where you need to get rid of them. So you can't complain too much, Craig, like you can relate to, because they've turned things for the better overall. In a vacuum, they absolutely have. But still, you wish that they could be a little bit more aware of the temperature of the fan base. Super League stuff, if you can relate. But, it's just one of those where like we have a lot of criticisms, but we can't go too far because they've also given us a lot of happy moments.
Mate, I think you have just summed it up with the perfect phrase, tone deaf. That is it. Some of these mistakes, whether it be around ticketing prices, the Super League, could have very easily been avoided with a little chat with a fan supporters group, with the Spirit of Shankly or something like that. So, wow, very intriguing to see it. Because I always maybe naively assumed that being from Boston, being Bostonians, the Red Sox being something that I thought that maybe they were more attached to, that they had more sentiment to it. But to hear that they were as tone deaf to the fans' wants there as well, it's very interesting point, Alex. Thank you. Now, I wanted to stay on owners for a second, because we've just seen today PSG announce Messi, number 30. We'll talk about Manchester City, and I find it very unfair that people lump Roman Abramovich's tenure at Chelsea and Sheikh Mansour at Manchester City into the same conversation. I find it very unfair because I don't think a lot of people see the good behind the scenes work, the loaning of players and the academy structure that gets Chelsea the profitability that they have. So I just wanted to give you, as a Chelsea fan, a second to maybe explain those differences to people who still try and lump them in as people who just throw good money after bad.
Yeah, I mean, good question for sure. And I know it's going to sound like really biased and probably corny coming from a huge Chelsea fan like myself, but despite Roman, of course, just having so much money and clearly helping Chelsea when he obviously took over at the club, Roman really, and I know you can say this for a lot of owners probably, but he admitted it from day one, like he doesn't really have Chelsea to make money. Of course, he has Chelsea because he has money, but with Chelsea, and you can see it with his son, like with Chelsea, that's almost like his affectionate passion. He's got all these other things. He loves his yacht. I mean, he can't even come in the country right now, but there are many ways that man can make money. And of course, he's put a lot of money into the club. But like you're kind of alluding to, like Chelsea have had this one in, one out policy. And also like, we're going to, yes, maybe spend big on players, but we're also going to sell, a lot of players that, by the way, like have come through our system. And, I do think Chelsea do it rather unique compared to other clubs. Like they have this amazing academy. I think many fans know that, whether you're a Liverpool fan and you think your players are better, it's not really the point. Just like overall, I think we know about Chelsea's academy success, even if you just want to talk about like the academy teams and how well they do. And yeah, I mean, sometimes we've let go of them almost too early for them to continue to their development and turn out to be the De Bruynes and Lukakus and Salahs, who weren't really academy guys. They were just obviously brought in at a young age from Chelsea. But like, honestly, we have so many players that, of course, we put through the loan cycle, and they're quite quality players. And for the most part, I think they do a great job of, giving them a great upbringing. Like I've talked to so many fathers, parents of players that are no longer at Chelsea. So they could have ill will, Craig. Like they could be like, oh yeah, they just used us as an object. They just built this up. And then the moment they could, they sold us. No, like they've all said, even the ones that once again have no ties to Chelsea anymore. No, like they made sure we were prepared professionally, personally, mentally. They took really good care of us when we were out on loan. They were always checking in. They were honest, and many deals are made where sure, it's £5 million here, £10 million there, £2 million there. I mean, we're doing it this summer, and a lot of it hurts because like some of these guys we had high hopes for, but Roman has done a very good job overall of like striking the balance of always trying to have the most competitive team, of course, and buying the big players if they're out there. But can we use our own? That's only happened more recently. I'm not going to lie. Like obviously that was not happening under Mourinho and other managers, but the loan system was. The system of, make 2 million here, make 5 million here, make 10 million here. So yes, we spend a lot, but if you do look at the net profits and everything, we're not at the very top because we are honestly making a lot of money back. So like, you can have your own opinions on it. Of course, if you want to be tribalistic, you can say, Chelsea were nothing before Roman bought them. Obviously that's going too far. We get it. But there's an intimacy that like we have in terms of how Roman lets Chelsea do business that feels rather appropriate. And like we just sold 2 guys that we had super high hopes for. Mark Gay, he just went to Crystal Palace and it's really a permanent sale. And Tino Livramento went to Southampton. These are players you're going to see in the Premier League this season facing Liverpool. They're not going to like youth teams. They're going to be in the Premier League. And yeah, I mean, we sold them. We got 20 million for Mark Gay. He didn't play 1 Premier League minute for us, Craig. 20 million pounds for a player that has not yet played a Premier League minute for Chelsea. Like that's brilliant business. And as much as I rate him, and I think he will up his value over the years, and if we do have a first refusal, we'll probably have to buy him back for 40 million plus. We just sold a player for 20 million pounds who hasn't played a minute of Premier League football yet. So in my opinion, that's good business.
That's why begrudgingly sometimes I do stand up for Chelsea in this debate around the PSGs and the Manchester Cities, because yes, I can't deny Abramovich changed the football financial landscape when he came in, but that's a very long time ago. And I think you guys are a sustainable club. I genuinely, hand on heart, believe Chelsea are a sustainable club. So I find it very unfair that what's going on at Manchester City and PSG is being compared to it. And Manchester City fans are trying to say, well, why aren't Chelsea getting this flack? I genuinely believe Chelsea when they say we're a self-sustainable club. I really do. I don't believe that nonsense when it comes out from Manchester City or Paris Saint-Germain. So, yeah, I just wanted to get your take on that, obviously, and, just let you know that we aren't all haters. We don't all look at it from one perspective only. Football is nuanced. These things aren't straightforward, even as tribalistic as it is. But I wanted to talk now on Thomas Tuchel and your future and how bright things are looking, unfortunately, from my perspective, obviously, for you guys right now. The signing that I was a bit hesitant to acknowledge as a good signing, but I think has turned out great, has been Thiago Silva. I think that was a masterstroke to bring him in with his leadership, with his expertise, with his heart and desire has impressed me so much. Even seeing him when he was injured or come off in the stands, cheering the players on. we could talk about Kai Havertz, we could talk about Werner, we could talk about all the other great signings, but for me, he's the one that stood out, and I can't quite pinpoint how he stood out that much to me, but he's really impressed me.
Yeah, it's a great shout. I mean, obviously, in terms of his resume, he's one of the best center backs of our generation, no doubt about it. But there were some question marks, at least some concerns about how is he going to be at this age in his first Premier League season ever. Like, that's a tall task to come over to the Premier League for the first time ever at 35. Now he's 36. And honestly, like, he was borderline flawless. If you take away 2 games against West Brom, of all teams, like a team that got relegated, he was almost immaculate. And the presence he brought was, I think, almost just as important, kind of like you're alluding to, compared to like the on-the-pitch performance. Of course, the on-the-pitch performance was great under Lampard and under Thomas Tuchel in terms of Silva himself. But I just felt like there was no way we were going to be able to win those massive games towards the end of the season. We had a lot of them in league and in the Champions League in a short amount of time under a new manager in Tuchel. I just felt like Thiago Silva was almost a placebo effect, Craig. So like, it was such a young team besides Thiago Silva and a couple others like an Azpilicueta and a Conte and a Jorginho. Such a young team that almost just them knowing Thiago Silva is out there, because his English was super limited, especially in year one. Just them knowing he was out there was such a security blanket in so many ways. And I've spoken to some players and they totally agreed, just like watching him do his thing, taking care of his body at that age. Like, it doesn't allow a 21-year-old to then be complacent and lackadaisical when a 36-year-old is literally taking care of his body as if you should at any age, probably even more so. Like, very unique cases, right? We see Ronaldo do that, Zlatan still at this age do that. So like, just leading by example. You can't speak English, but you can show them how you do it. So it was huge for the players. And then let's not also just ignore that there was a little bit of luck. So Lampard, there's a lot of people out there who like might not have loved Lampard's tenure as manager at all. I think it was super important, even though clearly, probably he was out of his depth at some point. But like, there's a lot of people who are trying to poke holes at the fact that maybe he didn't actually acquire himself any of these signings, because like our fans will be like, oh, Kai Havertz was a board signing, and Timo Werner was a board signing, and Ziyech was a board signing. Chilwell clearly was a Lampard one, but Thiago Silva was a Lampard one, because Lampard had to pretty much pitch to him, hey, like, this is a young team. Come and almost be like my second coach out here, coach on the pitch. So that went well, but then Lampard can't make it. And the luck I'm speaking of is, then Silva gets his manager from last season, Thomas Tuchel. That, of course, he went all the way to the Champions League final with and lost. And the poetry was, there's one picture of them consoling each other after they lost with PSG after the final. Next year, they're hugging after winning the Champions League final. And I just think that was the little bit of luck where it really connected things and almost felt so perfect. But yeah, like, I would call Thiago Silva, he was more than a placebo effect. But above all, I think he was the placebo effect. Like, we would have been too incomplete had we just had Christensen, Rudiger, Aspi, Zuma. Like, we needed that elder statesman for sure.
Let me take you back to that night in Portugal, that before that Kai Havertz goal. I mean, I think you guys laid down a couple of markers to Manchester City before that with a few very important results. Do you think that played into the guys' confidence going into that game, along with obviously Thomas Tuchel's great strategic knowledge of the game? How much do you think those wins over Manchester City previously may have played into the final, or not at all?
It's such a good question. Mark Goldberg said actually on my Romelu Lukaku special the other day that like he was thinking law of averages just might happen. And we were fearful of that too. Like, you can't beat City all these times in a row and then expect you're just going to beat them again, even if you're confident. But it's a good question because we played them in such a short amount of time. We had them in the FA Cup final, and then we had them in the league. And what was funny was like the FA Cup final was obviously a game we cared a bit more about at the time. Sure, we wanted to win the league game because we needed to qualify for top four, but they were in such a short amount of time of each other that at that point, like, we wanted a trophy. So we really put it out there in the FA Cup final, and we did really, really well. Like, Tuchel outclassed Pep Guardiola, Chelsea outclassed Manchester City. There's a lot of our regulars like Reece James. I still remember that second half. he absolutely burned Benjamin Mendy down the side continuously. And there's great images of Pep like putting his hand on his head being like, what am I going to do to stop this? And we really took it to them. And then in the league game, it was weird because like us fans were almost saying like, whatever, we're going to lose. Like, it is what it is. Just take care of our games after City. And we stole it. Like, we stole it at the very end. It was so weird. Like, we went from probably losing to, all right, we got an equalizer. I think that's how it went. And then in the last seconds, Marcos Alonso and Callum Hudson-Odoi both try to kick the ball. Alonso actually kicks it, and we win, and we steal it. So that one didn't make me too nervous because it wasn't our regulars. So it's like, all right, whatever. But no, I was still nervous. Like, how many times can you beat Pep and City overall? But I want to touch on your point. Like, I think coming into the Champions League final, those are one-offs anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think only the positives were taken from it, like you just alluded to, like the confidence. Young team in Chelsea. So they probably needed to know, hey, we can beat City. We can beat City multiple times. And young players stepped up in that game. Reece James had a phenomenal game in the Champions League final. Mason Mount, phenomenal assist to Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz, goal. So like the young players probably did take a lot of confidence from all those wins over City. And I don't know if Tuchel needs the confidence. Like, he's a very confident guy. There are some parallels between him and Jurgen Klopp for sure, besides the fact that they're German. So like, I think he's always very comfortable with his tactics. But if anything, Craig, last point, maybe in beating City a few times in a row, it actually made Pep make probably an over tweak like he did in the Champions League final. And he didn't play with a DM. He just didn't play with a DM. So maybe just those wins helped our youngsters, but also messed with Pep's mind before. And that has happened. Pep has overthought things. And I think he did again.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people who would say that Pep overthinks the big occasions and has done a lot of times. And look, on behalf of the rest of the footballing world, thank you for saving football that night because, mate, PSG and Man City are two clubs I never want to see put their hands on the European Cup because it takes away the romanticism of football for me if that happens. So, well done on that one, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looking into the season ahead, now obviously Romelu Lukaku's a done deal. Jules Koundé is one that I find really interesting because I love that guy. I've watched him at Sevilla and I've heard people argue, centre-backs in the Premier League or centre-backs need to be 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". They've obviously never heard of people like Carlos Puyol before. They've never seen Cannavaro play football before. How close is this one to getting done? And are you looking forward to him potentially wearing the blue of Chelsea?
Yeah, it seems close, but not as close as it was originally stated when Fabrizio Romano broke it on a Twitch stream one day. Like, he almost gave off the impression that it was imminently going to get done that night, maybe even the next day. Now, the holdup was, and this is no slight to Fabrizio, who's obviously the best in the game at what he does, but the holdup was clearly Kurt Zuma's role in the whole deal. And it doesn't sound like he's too keen on going elsewhere, like out of London. He's got a family, they're settled, so fair play to him. Why should he just say, yeah, I'll help you get Koundé and go to Sevilla? No, I think as fans, we often forget, like, these are real people that are involved in deals, and swap deals are rare anyway. And maybe this is a reason why, right? Like, why would Zuma just say, oh, you guys want Koundé? Sure, I'll go to Spain for you. No. So that was the holdup. But everything that's come out since from all the credible people, even from what I hear, that Chelsea are determined to get Koundé, and they have the ultimate confidence that they will get Koundé after Lukaku is totally done and dusted, which he pretty much is. And I think probably the important factor there is Koundé is apparently super keen on it. Like, he's already agreed personal terms. And then Tuchel, I guess, has known of and liked Koundé for a handful of years now. So when you have mutual interest from both sides and also the club, yeah, it's going to get done. How excited am I? Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Like, the hype thing's an interesting one. I totally agree with you that it's something that's probably overstated in some situations. So in a back four, I do believe he could still be a good center back. That's where I'm a bit more nervous. I know he has played that in Spain, but like Premier League defenders, center backs who are 5'10", just you have to be really good. So he's got a lot of talent. So just use all that talent, use your intelligence, and the players who are a bit shorter, if you have the intelligence, you can make up for that lack of height. Like, Thiago Silva is not the tallest. He's still a little taller than Koundé, but he's only 6 foot. And Silva's still great in the air because he's super smart on when to jump. So Koundé, he has pretty good aerial ability actually for his size. So as long as he uses his intelligence. He learns, hopefully, from a Thiago Silva and just uses that awesome talent that he has. Yeah, in a back four, I think he can handle it. In the current formation, brilliant. Like, what a brilliant signing that would be to have him at right center back with he can move over to right back a little bit, but he'd probably play all three center back positions in a back three. But Craig, I mean, the number one reason why I'm really excited is he's a talented player who's wanted by the manager. Of course, he's coveted by many teams. Like, I love the fact that he snubs Spurs because he wants Champions League football. When a player snubs Spurs, especially for us Chelsea fans, but I'm sure you guys can relate as well, like snubbing Spurs, you're already part of our family. Like, welcome. So just from like, kind of a joking perspective, but not really, like, thank you. I love your ambition. So come on and join us because our manager wants you. You want us. And Kai Havertz, 21. Mason Mount, 22. Reece James, 21. Christian Pulisic, 22. Callum Hudson-Odoi, 20. You want to add on Jules Koundé, 22? Be my guest.
It's frightening, mate. I'm not going to lie. Just hearing you rattle off those names, it does strike fear in. And I want to, before I get on to how you think the season's going to go, I want to just take a second to talk about Timo Werner. And I want to defend Timo Werner because I am sick to death of seeing footballers written off after one season in the Premier League, particularly when they're coming from a different league. I've seen so many examples, even looking at Liverpool. It took Andy Robertson 6 months, even get a look in really at Liverpool. And the Premier League is littered with players who've taken time to settle. And I think it's been extremely unfair. I think he's obviously had his fair share of really tight offside decisions go against them. But Timo Werner does not become an awful player overnight. So one, are you expecting more from him this season? And two, has it really annoyed you to see some people just write him off so quickly?
It annoys me that Chelsea fans do it, but when Mark Goldbridge says Timo, Cavani, just when anybody misses a sitter and he puts Timo on the front of their name, I think it's hilarious. But also, it's because I think Timo's got a great mentality and like he's really likable. So I'm okay with like the banter side of it. I've had parents of Chelsea players on the podcast who have even cracked jokes about Timo missing sitters. And I don't think that happens without Timo having a really good personality about it. But you don't want to go too far because obviously the first year in the Premier League, I totally agree with you, can really just be the first year and just the beginning. And so often, I mean, stats will back it up, so often the second season is so much better than the first. You just want to make sure that first year isn't too traumatic that there's no turning back. So luckily, it wasn't because we win the Champions League. And at the end of the day, you can say that Timo Werner was still really important in helping us win the Champions League. I mean, he got goals, not many, but like gets one against Real Madrid. And, he got goals or made good decoy runs. Obviously, his movement is fantastic. He was always annoying for the opposition. So like both managers, Lampard and Tuchel, always found it useful to have him out there. So he wasn't useless. He was just frustrating. Maybe the thicker lines also this season will help him a bit. But yeah, just overall, like I think he's a great example of don't write him off yet because I agree. Like I know it's the Bundesliga and it doesn't mean that if you had success there, you'll have success in the Premier League. But you don't have that much success in the Bundesliga for a handful of years and then just be utterly trash. No. So I think just too much was on his plate in year one. Like we had all this excitement about getting Ziyech, Werner, Kai Havertz, Ben Chilwell, Mendy, and Silva all at once. And then plus the young guys that we had from the first season under Lampard. We were all kind of buying the hype so much, but really it was up to Werner to be the main goal scorer, to pretty much replicate the stats that he had in the Bundesliga over in the Premier League. And that's a tall task. Of course, like that COVID season was really hard on teams that acquired a lot of players. And I'm not cutting excuses for us. Of course, like in the end, we did just fine. But I think that really hurt. So it kind of snowballed like, oh man, I think he did get low on confidence with his shooting. But Craig, what I really like about him is he doesn't get low on confidence with his movement. Like he will continue to move and to run. He's relentless. So I am hopeful. We'll see what happens with his minutes, right? Because like if we stick in this formation, Lukaku starts, Kai Havertz starts, Mason Mount starts. But I gotta believe that Tuchel isn't just going to give up on Timo Werner. And there's a huge argument to be made that actually bringing Lukaku in could really free up Timo Werner. He did really well playing in a two-striker formation in Germany. And if there's not all the weight in the world on Werner to score, but he can make movement off of other players that can also score, he could really explode. So, you know, I think he'll definitely do better than year one. And as long as he does better than year one, Craig, I think your overall point is why write players off after year one. Doesn't matter the position. Like you said with Andy Robertson, there's so many examples. So, yeah, I think it would be really stupid to write off a player like that after year one. Yeah.
The thing for me about attacking players forwards is that if they get in the right positions, they're missing chances, fair enough, but they're getting in the right positions, and eventually that's going to click. If they're not getting themselves in the goal scoring positions to miss these chances, that's when I'd be worried as a fan. Yeah. So to look at the campaign coming up, I mean, it all kicks off on Friday with Arsenal against Brentford. I don't think anybody is going to be able to budge the top four, Alex. I think, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, United, as good as Leicester City's business has been, I can't see anybody ousting the top four. What are your thoughts on it?
It's the first time I've actually sunk my teeth into it. But with United's moves, Sancho, Varane, they can probably stand pat, and unless they really screw things up, I mean, they should definitely be finishing top four. Because I think the only thing they really now need, besides more depth, is probably a proper DM. But I think they can get by without that to at least finish top four. Like, they have a lot of talent now, pure talent. And they finished second, right? So, yeah. And then Liverpool, I mean, come on. I think we all know why Liverpool didn't do as well. They just were so injured. I mean, it was just insane. Like, trust me, I understand it. Now, I still think, like, you could have a bit of a hangover from your success the season before, or really the seasons before, I should say. But they would have done better if they weren't so injured. And it was like one thing after another, trust me. Because I've had teams, whether it's Chelsea or just other sports teams I like in other sports, where like you pay attention to it because it's the team you follow, and it feels like, all right, our 3 injured players are back, and now one of our best players is down. Like, it was just one thing after another for you guys. So yeah, assuming that's at least more normal, have to be top four. Liverpool, too good, too experienced. City, come on, with or without Harry Kane, absolutely, and Chelsea. So. Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of had to go team by team, but like, I totally agree. And that's probably hard on Leicester just because once again, they've done such brilliant business, like sneaky Leicester business, getting all these players that aren't necessarily like household names, but they're good enough where big teams were looking at them. But Leicester loved to take those players where they could make the huge leap to an even bigger team than Leicester, but really they're the nice bridge, and they could have them for a while. I'm not even saying that Leicester are a true bridge team. They really have a really nice intimacy, I think, within their own club. Like, players apparently really like to play at Leicester and for Brendan Rodgers. But yeah, I think it's less to do with Leicester and more to do with the other four. And of course, I don't think Arsenal and Tottenham are finishing in top four. So yeah, I agree with that. I had to almost go process of elimination, or process of qualification, I should say.
Yeah, one thing about Brendan Rodgers is I think he gets a lot of flack for unfair reasons. I mean, the Liverpool job, I just think, came too early for him. Obviously, from his background working as a coach at Chelsea, there aren't many better out there at developing young talent than Brendan Rodgers. And you look at the players that he's coached and have spoken with, he's done a very fine job at Leicester. And as you said, their recruitment mate it's been probably sneaky, was a good word that you said, but up there with the best valued business. Patson Daka could be an extremely clever signing.
Absolutely. They got Daka, and they got Boubacar Soumaré from Lille, a midfielder who, like, we'll see how he does. But this was a guy that like a year ago Chelsea were interested in, and he's a young midfielder from Ligue 1. Like, a lot of top teams look for these midfielders from Ligue 1, like a Chouameni, who a lot of teams could be looking for, a Camavinga. I'm not saying Soumaré was at that name status, but he was close, like, if you pay attention to that league. So yeah, they just seem to get all of these guys who, maybe they won't all be home runs, but the prices they're getting them at, like, great prices. So yeah, it speaks really highly though of Brendan Rodgers once again, that like he can get people to buy in to such a team atmosphere that Leicester have. And hey, they're annoying, like, to us, to the objective, they're actually probably really nice to root for, maybe. But obviously, when you only have one team, they're annoying because they've done well against us. They've done well against us for sure. So yeah, no, hats off to them. But I think they'll be more of a Europa qualifier this season.
Last question, and a really quick one. People ask me this all the time, and I always have a consistent answer. You can only win one trophy this season coming up. Are you taking the Premier League or the Champions League?
Yeah, this one kills me because almost every other year I say the Champions League because I think we can all agree, like, if you're going to split hairs, it's the biggest trophy because, it is, right? But even if you don't want to say, all right, I'm taking the Premier League because we won the Champions League last year, there's something really special about winning the Premier League because you put more time and effort into it. You just play so many more games in that competition. So if we were on a neutral ground, I don't get me wrong, I would say the Champions League. I definitely would. But I have to say the Premier League this season for the reason I gave of, like, we're about to play 38 games in the Premier League. So above all, like, my time and energy is going to be spent the most on the Premier League. Even if we go to the final in the Champions League, factually, it'll be on the Premier League. And I just want to win that again, man. I just want to win that again. Like, obviously now for this new regime we're building too, it would do a lot for Tuchel's legacy, a lot for all of our young players' legacy to win the Champions League and then the Premier League. But yeah, there's just something so authentic and just feels so good to know that you went through this long campaign and you were the best team for the 38 games. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you ask me this next year, even if we don't win either this season, I'll probably be like, it's been long enough. Let's go for the Champions League again. But nah, this season above all. And I think many Chelsea fans would agree. I think many would, even though it's really tough. Premier League, yeah.
I would wish you luck, mate, with the season ahead, but we are competitors, we are rivals, so I can't bring myself to do it. But look, we'll have all the links to your socials and stuff in the description of the stream. But what can people expect from Alex Goldberg coming up? What have you got ahead in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so my podcast just continues as always on Patreon. It's called The Byline. I'm just trying to have on, as exciting guests as possible in terms of just from random spots in the industry, players, parents of players, referees. I got a referee up my sleeve coming on. I love having announcers on. I'm a bit of a broadcasting nerd, so I love having announcers on who called the games that we maybe just watched. So I'm going to try and do a lot of that this season. We're like, all right, who called the Chelsea game? Let's have them on the next day. That's kind of my goal, to do a lot more of that. I do post pods on there. But beyond that, I mean, I'm definitely going to ramp up some Twitter videos, which I kind of made my following off of to begin with, like years and years ago. So I don't want to just do all on a private platform. So you'll see me a bit more in different places, I guess you could say. And it's a little too early to say it, but I do have something kind of almost a personal branding that will launch soon that I'm excited about as well. So, and hopefully a collaboration with you yourself on The Byline.
Absolutely. It will be my pleasure. And look, you are one of the nicest guys I've had the pleasure to chat to, like Goldbridge. I really enjoyed my time chatting with you, mate. I wish you nothing but continued success. Can't say so much for your club, as I'm sure you'll understand. But Alex, thank you for giving up the time, mate. Lots of love to you and your family. And I hope you just have a cracking career ahead of you, because you deserve it, mate. You're one of the good ones.
Man, thank you so much, Craig. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll take all those sentiments and throw them right back at you. I really mean it. I love seeing you on Twitter. Honestly, just seeing your presence on Twitter kind of brightens my day, because you and I were speaking right before we started recording and just saying how crazy Twitter can be sometimes. So the moment you see just someone that you genuinely like as a person, it just kind of brightens up your day. So yeah, keep doing your thing, and we'll definitely have a lot more collaborations soon.
Alex Goldberg, thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video. You know the routine by now. And again, massive thank you to Alex for coming on.